Welcome to OkState Daily. Casey Porter here. So glad you decided to tune in. Not going to mince words on this. Last night for Oklahoma State, for the men's team, it was bowling shoe ugly. Oklahoma State has 2 wins in conference, at home against K-State, at home against Colorado. And so Oklahoma State has proven that they have enough talent to beat K-State, because they already have. They beat them by double digits. And then they go on the road and lose 85-57. And yes, that score was indicative of just how ridiculous that game was. Oklahoma State, way too many turnovers. Again, K-State, way too many easy shots. They hit a layup like a minute into the game to take the lead, and that pretty much was an indication of how the entire game was going to go. K-State put 4 young men in double digits. Brennan Housen had 18. Coleman Hawkins had 15. Max Jones had 14. Doug McDaniel also had 10. And then Bryce Thompson, at least his scoring was really the only bright spot last night. He scored in double digits with 11. That's his 7th double-digit scoring game in a row. So the fact that Bryce Thompson is scoring is somewhat of a bright spot amongst a really dark part of Oklahoma State basketball. 21 turnovers for OSU last night. 21 turnovers, 21 made buckets. And hey, I tell you what, I'm going to hold this program accountable. Coach Lutz, all the players in it, whatever that may be. I go to all the games, and I will always go to all the games because I love going to these games. But that's pitiful. I mean, I know that sounds overly negative. I know whatever that, I don't care. Last night was pitiful. It was pathetic. It was whatever word you want to use. And however dramatic you want to get in terms of describing how bad last night was, it's not an overreaction. Last night was ridiculous. It was pitiful. It was pathetic. It's not acceptable. And the thing about it is 21 turnovers, 21 made buckets. That just goes to show you that we're almost in February. This team's not sharing the ball. They're playing hero ball. They're not playing team basketball. They're not doing any of that, and it's really ugly and it's really hard to watch. So let's not get any more of the stats, right? Because none of them are good. Kind of want to just kind of get into just some overall thoughts. You know, McKinley has mentioned this a couple times, that really the measuring success for Coach Lutz this year shouldn't be wins and losses. And for most of the OSU fans, all of them I've talked to, they're not judging Coach Lutz on how many games OSU wins. They're judging him based on just kind of what they see with their eyes, the process of it. Hey, does this look like good basketball? Is it getting better? Are we developing an identity? Is there something to be excited about? Can you see that this program is building? And to be honest with you, as of right now, you can't see any of it. It's not any better than what Coach Boynton was doing. It's not. In fact, it's getting worse, right? And so here's the biggest concern, and I've mentioned this before, is that he got into Oklahoma State late. Yes, no doubt. He was behind the 8 ball. It handicapped the type of roster he could put together. But he went out and got really older veteran-type guys to try to patchwork together kind of a Band-Aid that maybe could win the most amount of games possible. He's kind of has the reputation of being like a hired assassin if you want to make the NCAA tournament. Well, that's how you do it. You go get older guys. So to me, that caps your ceiling, because these guys already have kind of proven what they are and what their ceilings are. And then also it makes it to where you're not building any kind of future, because when you look at most of these guys won't be coming back, right? And so like Connor Dowd, Myron Keller, maybe Arturo Dean, Vukovic, who played a little bit last night, and that's if they come back, right? But by and large, this is going to be a roster that, as it's trending down, Oklahoma State's 10-10 now, 2-8 in conference play, not going to make the NCAA tournament, barring some kind of miraculous turnaround. And so you're not going to make the NCAA tournament. You're not going to get anything accomplished from a wins and loss perspective this year. And then this year is going to end, and the roster is going to completely turn over again. And you're going to be starting exactly from scratch all over again. So what did you gain out of this year? I mean, you didn't gain any kind of building momentum towards next year. You didn't gain any kind of street cred in terms of wins and losses, making the state tournament. They're making the NCAA tournament that might want to make a player from somewhere else want to come to Oklahoma State. The crowds didn't get better. And starting next year, the roster is a complete reset. So probably the biggest disappointing part of this to me is not that you go on the road to lose to K-State. It's the fact that it's just such ugly, bad basketball. And then there is nothing that I can look forward to and say, well, they're doing this and this is what's going to help us next year. Well, they're doing that and this is what's going to make us a really good program 3 years from now. There's no building being done. So it just feels like this year is just a complete, just total loss. I mean, like a complete and total loss. And that just kind of as Oklahoma State fans, as much as I love OSU, as much as I love going to the games, as much as I want Coach Lutz to succeed, it just feels like at this point, everybody's just clicking off days on the calendar until the end of the season. Like, that's kind of what we're left with no real excitement, none of that. It's just, when will the last day of the season click off or this can be over, right? And so these guys have a decision. Most of them have no real ties to Oklahoma State. They have no real ties to their teammates. They haven't had time to build a brotherhood. They're not going to accomplish their goals as a team. This all sounds familiar, right? We saw the football team go down this road. And so they have a choice. They can either play for the brand, which would be OSU. They can play for their teammates. They can play for themselves, like if they want to, like if Arturo Dean wants to better his cause for next year, Jamyron Keller or Connor Dow or whoever. If they want to play for themselves and better their situations next year for themselves, or if any of these guys that won't be here next year thinks that they might be able to play overseas or something like that, they can play for themselves, or they can do what we just mentioned just a second ago, and they can just play to get the next day over and to get the season over. I think we saw a lot of that last part in the football part of it, and it got real ugly. I just hope that's not the decision that this group makes. I still have talking to a lot of people that know a lot more about basketball than I do. We heard Coach Sampson's comments on Steve Lutz, and I'm telling you, the people I talk to are very high on Steve Lutz. I'm not there to where I'm like down on him or anything. I'm not down, but disappointed definitely the way this season has turned out and is turning out. And hopefully they can turn it around and make a miraculous comeback. We saw in the Brad Underwood year, they started 0-7 in conference and ended up being really good, right? So there is still time for a miraculous comeback, but there are no signs that that's going to happen. So definitely not down or wanting to give up on Coach Lutz or any of that, but definitely disappointed. I think that's a fair comment to make. So that's my talk on Oklahoma State basketball. Again, bowling shoe ugly last night. They host Utah on Saturday, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Hopefully that's at least a decent crowd. I will be there. I'm always excited to go watch. Can't wait. Saturday, you got the girls at 11 o'clock. Huge game. Then you get that game over. You get to go watch the boys and have a really good day of basketball. Hopefully both teams can come out with a victory. So, hey, I really appreciate you tuning in to OkState Daily, and go Pokes.